The doorbell rang at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, and when I opened it, my husband of 23 years was standing there with another woman's hand in his. She was wearing my grandmother's ring, the one I'd thought was locked in our safe deposit box. That's when I smiled, pulled out my phone, and said the 5 words that would cost him everything. "Officers, they're here now." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we dive into how I took back every single penny he tried to steal from me, and I mean every penny of that $1.8 million, let me ask you to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What you're about to hear is the true story of how 23 years of marriage, sacrifice, and trust ended with my husband handcuffed in my driveway while his mistress screamed about her rights. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, if you've ever wondered whether karma is real, stay with me. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you want to support the channel, a super thanks would mean the world. Now, let me take you back to where this really began. My name is Margaret, though Richard always called me Maggie. I'm 62 years old now, but this story starts when I was 39 and stupid enough to believe that love conquered all. I met Richard Chen at a hospital fundraiser in 2002. I was a nurse practitioner. He was a commercial real estate developer who'd just closed a major deal downtown. He was 41, handsome in that silver fox way, and he made me laugh. God, he made me laugh. After my first marriage ended badly when I was 27, that's a whole other story involving a gambling addiction and $50,000 of debt I had to dig us out of. I'd convinced myself I was better off alone. Richard changed that. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. It wasn't some grand romantic gesture. We were having coffee in my tiny apartment kitchen on a Sunday morning, and he just looked at me and said, "Marry me, Maggie. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." I said yes. We got married in June 2003 at City Hall. Small ceremony. Just his business partner David and my best friend Linda as witnesses. Richard said he wanted to save money for our future instead of blowing it on one fancy day. I thought that was wise. Practical. God, I was so stupid. Those first years were good. Really good. Richard's business was growing. I was working 60-hour weeks at the hospital, pulling double shifts, saving every penny I could. We bought our first house together in 2005, a modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. I put down $40,000 from my savings for the down payment. Richard contributed $30,000. The house was in both our names. I need you to remember that number, $40,000. My money. We settled into a routine. I'd work my shifts, days, nights, weekends, whatever. The hospital needed. Richard would travel for work, sometimes a week at a time, looking at properties, meeting with investors, closing deals. When he was home, we'd have dinner together, we'd watch old movies, we'd talk about our future. We talked about children. I wanted them. Richard said he did too, but he wanted to wait until his business was more stable. "Let's build our nest egg first," he'd say. "Then we can give our kids everything." So I waited. Years passed. Richard's business exploded. By 2008, despite the recession, he was making serious money. He had this gift for seeing potential where others saw risk. He'd buy struggling commercial properties, renovate them, flip them, or lease them at huge profits. His company, Chen Development LLC, was pulling in 7 figures annually. And I was still working my 60-hour weeks. In 2010, Richard came to me with a proposal. He wanted to buy a larger property, an old office building downtown that he could convert to luxury condos. The purchase price was $2.4 million. He had investors lined up for $1.6 million, but he needed $800,000 more. "I could get a loan," he said, "but the interest would kill our profit margin. What if we used our savings?" Our savings. The money I'd been squirreling away from every paycheck for 7 years. The emergency fund I'd built. The retirement account I'd been maxing out. It totaled $387,000. "What about the rest?" I asked. "I'll take out a loan for $413,000, he said. "But your money gets us better terms. And Maggie, this deal's going to triple our investment. We're talking about making $2.4 million profit minimum. This is our ticket to early retirement, to that life we've been planning." I trusted him. God help me, I trusted him completely. I liquidated my retirement account, taking the penalty and tax hit. I emptied our savings. I gave him $387,000, and I didn't even ask him to put my name on the property. He said it would be easier for tax purposes to keep it under the LLC, and I believed him. The development took 3 years, 2010 to 2013. During that time, I worked even more hours to rebuild our emergency fund. Richard was consumed by the project, constant travel, late nights, weekend meetings. I barely saw him. But when those condos sold in 2013, he'd been right. The profit was $2.7 million. We were rich, or I thought we were. Richard took me to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. He ordered champagne. He held my hand across the table and said, "We did it, Maggie. Everything we worked for. It's here." "So what now?" I asked. "Now we invest it wisely," he said. "I'm putting most of it into a diversified portfolio. Real estate, stocks, bonds. We're set for life." I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded to see the accounts. I should have insisted on joint ownership of everything. But I was tired. I was 51 years old and exhausted from a decade of backbreaking work, and I just wanted to believe that we'd finally made it, that I could slow down, that we could start actually living instead of just grinding. Richard convinced me to cut back my hours at the hospital. "You've earned it," he said. "Work part-time, enjoy life." So I did. I went from 60 hours a week to 30. I took up gardening. I joined a book club. I actually had time to see Linda, who kept telling me how lucky I was, how Richard was such a good provider, how devoted he was. The next 7 years passed in a comfortable blur. Richard's business continued to thrive. He was traveling more than ever, sometimes 2 weeks out of every month. Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, Seattle. "The business is national now," he'd explain. "I have to maintain relationships with clients and investors." I didn't question it. We upgraded to a larger house in 2015, a beautiful 5-bedroom with a pool. The house cost $900,000. Richard said he'd paid cash from his business profits. The deed was in his name only. "For liability protection," he explained. "If the business gets sued, they can't touch our home this way." I believed him. In 2017, my mother died and left me an inheritance, $243,000. Richard suggested I invest it in his latest development project. "Better than letting it sit in a bank earning nothing," he said. I gave him the money, every penny. Looking back now, I can see how carefully he groomed me, how systematically he separated me from my money while making me feel like we were partners, how he isolated me from anything that might give me independence or security. But I didn't see it then. Then, I was just Maggie Chen, the lucky wife of a successful businessman, living in a beautiful house with the freedom to work part-time and enjoy life. I was so blind. The first crack in my perfect illusion appeared on March 14th, 2020. COVID had just shut down the world. Richard was supposed to be in Seattle for a property closing, but all the flights got canceled. He came home 3 days early on a Thursday afternoon, and I was surprised but happy. We'd have time together during lockdown, I thought. A silver lining. He was agitated when he arrived, distracted, constantly on his phone. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," he snapped. "Just work stress. The Seattle deal is complicated." That night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and he wasn't in bed. I found him in his home office, door closed, talking on the phone in a hushed voice. I stood in the hallway listening. "I can't come back right now," he was saying. "I told you, I'm stuck here." "No, she doesn't know. Baby, please, just give me a few weeks to figure this out." Baby. He called someone baby. My heart started pounding. My hands went cold. I stood there in my nightgown in the dark hallway, and something inside me just broke. I went back to bed. I didn't confront him. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid of what I'd hear. Maybe I needed time to process. Maybe some part of me already knew the truth would be worse than I could imagine. The next morning, Richard was cheerful, made me breakfast, kissed my forehead, acted like everything was fine. I played along, but I started watching. noticing, paying attention to things I'd ignored for years, like how he had two phones now, his work phone and his personal phone, how he was very careful to never leave the work phone unattended, like how his business trips often fell on specific weeks of the month, the first and third week, almost always, like how he'd stopped wanting to have sex with me. We'd been intimate maybe 5 times in the past year, and I'd blamed it on age, stress, exhaustion. But now I wondered, during those early COVID months when everything was locked down and Richard couldn't travel, he was miserable, snappish, distant, on the phone constantly, always going outside for business calls. And then one day in May, he announced he had to go to Los Angeles for an essential business meeting. "They're not letting people fly," I said. "Everything's still shut down." "I'll drive," he said. "I have to finalize this deal in person. I'll be gone 2 weeks." 2 weeks. For a meeting. "Richard, that doesn't make sense." "Maggie, you don't understand the business," he said sharply. "This is a $15 million deal. I have to be there. I'll be staying at a corporate apartment the company owns. I'll be safe. I'll be careful." He left on a Monday morning, kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me. I watched his car disappear down the street, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I went into his home office. I'd never snooped before, never invaded his privacy. But that voice on the phone, "Baby, please," it haunted me. I needed to know. His office was neat, organized, everything in its place. I started with his desk drawers, files, documents, business contracts, nothing personal. Then I found a locked drawer in our home office. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I searched his sock drawer and found a small key hidden in a rolled-up pair of dress socks. The key fit. Inside the drawer, I found a burner phone. My hands were shaking as I turned it on. No password protection, just a simple flip phone with a call log and text messages. The most recent texts were to a contact saved as J. "Made it to LA safely. Miss you already. Can't wait to hold you again. 2 weeks felt like forever. Love you, baby. See you soon." I sat there on his office floor, reading through months of messages, loving messages, intimate messages, messages that made it clear this wasn't some casual affair. This was a relationship. And then I found one that stopped my heart. "Can't believe it's been 8 years already. Happy anniversary, my love. You and the girls are my whole world." 8 years. The girls. He had children. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I actually thought I might pass out. With shaking fingers, I scrolled through the photos on the phone. There weren't many. Richard was careful even with his burner phone. But there were enough. Richard with a woman. Asian, beautiful, maybe 35 years old, his arm around her. Richard with the same woman and 2 little girls, maybe 6 and 8 years old, all of them smiling at a playground. Richard kissing the woman on a beach somewhere. Richard cutting a birthday cake, one of the little girls grinning up at him with missing front teeth. A family. He had a whole other family. I don't know how long I sat there on that floor. Time stopped meaning anything. My entire life, my entire marriage, 23 years of love and trust and sacrifice. It was all a lie. Eventually, I heard myself making a sound, a low, keening wail that didn't sound human. I grabbed a trash can and vomited until there was nothing left. Then, I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Relocked the drawer, returned the key, closed the office door, and I started planning. I didn't confront him immediately. That's what shocked me about myself. The old Maggie, the naive Maggie, she would have called him screaming, crying, demanding answers. But something had hardened inside me when I saw those photos. Some cold, calculating part of my brain took over and said, "Don't tip your hand. Find out everything first. Then, destroy him." I knew that if I confronted him with just the evidence of an affair, he'd lie. He'd minimize. He'd say it was a mistake. It meant nothing. He'd end it. And I'd be left with a broken heart and no recourse. But if he had another family, if he'd been living a double life for 8 years, then there was more to uncover. And I was going to uncover all of it before I made a move. I had 2 weeks while he was in Los Angeles. I started with our finances. Richard had always handled the money. He was the business expert. He'd show me quarterly statements, tell me we were doing great, and I'd nod and trust, but I'd never dug deep, never asked detailed questions, never demanded access to actual accounts. That changed. I found our tax returns first. Richard kept copies in a file cabinet. I spread out the last 10 years of returns on the dining room table and really looked at them for the first time. Our joint income had been substantial, my nursing income plus his business profits. We should have been very wealthy. We'd made over $2 million in the past 5 years alone. But where was it? I found statements for one joint checking account with $18,000. That was it. No savings accounts in both names, no investment accounts listing me as co-owner. I opened Richard's laptop next. I knew his password. It was my birthday, 0514, which I'd always thought was sweet. Now it just felt like another manipulation. I went through his email. Years of emails. What I found made me physically ill. Richard didn't just have another family, he had another entire life. Her name was Jennifer Wu. She was 37 years old. She was a dental hygienist, and according to the emails, Richard had married her in 2012. Married her, which meant my husband was a bigamist. We'd been married since 2003. He'd married Jennifer in 2012, 9 years into our marriage. It wasn't even a secret Vegas wedding or some drunken mistake. It was a planned ceremony at a hotel in Los Angeles with 50 guests. I found photos in his email. Jennifer in a white dress, Richard in a tuxedo, both of them beaming. And I'd been at the hospital that weekend, pulling a double shift because Richard said he had an urgent business trip. The emails painted a detailed picture. Richard had set up his life in 2-week rotations. 2 weeks with me in Seattle, 2 weeks with Jennifer and their daughters, Emma, age 8, and Sophie, age 6, in Los Angeles. He had 2 homes, 2 wives, 2 completely separate existences, and he'd been juggling them flawlessly for 8 years. The cost alone must have been staggering. 2 mortgages, 2 families to support, private school tuition for the girls, $35,000 per year. Jennifer's car, my car, travel expenses. Where was all the money coming from? I dug deeper into his email, found correspondence with his accountant, and that's when I discovered the really devastating truth. Chen Development LLC wasn't as successful as Richard had claimed. The company had taken major losses in 2018 and 2019. 2 development projects had failed. Richard had lost almost $4 million. To cover the losses and maintain both households, he'd been systematically draining every asset we had. The diversified investment portfolio he'd told me about, it didn't exist. The money from the 2013 condo project, the $2.7 million we'd made, gone. Spent on his double life. My mother's inheritance, the $243,000 I'd given him in 2017, gone. The equity in our house? He'd taken out a second mortgage in 2019 for $400,000. I'd never known. Never signed anything. He'd forged my signature. I found the document in his files. I compared the signature to mine. It wasn't even close. Every cent I'd ever saved, every dollar I'd ever earned, every penny of inheritance from my mother, he'd stolen it all to fund his second family. And we were broke. Not just broke, in debt. The second mortgage was in default. We were 3 months behind on payments. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. The house I thought we owned free and clear, we were going to lose it in 60 days. I sat at our dining room table surrounded by papers and realized I had nothing. No savings, no retirement, no home equity, no investments. 23 years of work, sacrifice, trust, and I had nothing. Meanwhile, Richard had set up a separate life with Jennifer that was fully funded. The Los Angeles house was paid off. He'd used my mother's inheritance as the down payment. It was in his and Jennifer's names. Jennifer had her own car, paid in full. The girls' college funds were healthy, $200,000 combined. He'd taken my money and built a life with another woman. I didn't cry. That's the strange thing. I thought I'd break down, but instead, I just felt cold, numb, like something had frozen inside me and I'd never be warm again. I spent the next 3 days documenting everything. I photographed every document. I forwarded every incriminating email to a secret email address I created. I downloaded every file. I made copies of the tax returns, bank statements, mortgage documents, investment records. I photographed the burner phone screen and all its messages. I documented everything he'd stolen, every lie he'd told, every asset he'd hidden. And then I called a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Goldstein. She was 60 years old, a partner at one of the best family law firms in Seattle, and she'd been recommended by Linda, who'd used her during her own divorce 3 years earlier. I met Patricia on a Friday morning at her office. I brought 3 folders of documents. I laid it all out: the bigamy, the fraud, the forged signature, the hidden second family, the missing money. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Mrs. Chen, what you're describing isn't just grounds for divorce. It's multiple felonies: bigamy, fraud, forgery, identity theft." "I want to destroy him," I said. My voice was calm, flat. "I want back every cent he stole. I want him to lose everything. I want his second wife to know what he did. I want him prosecuted. Can you help me do that?" Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I can. But we need to be strategic. If we tip our hand too early, he'll move money, hide assets, maybe even flee. We need to build an airtight case first, and we need to stay quiet until we're ready to strike." "How long?" "A few months, maybe longer. Can you pretend nothing's wrong? Can you play the loving wife while we build the case?" I thought about it. Thought about having to smile at him, kiss him, pretend I didn't know he was living a double life. "Yes," I said. "I can do whatever it takes." And I did. Richard came home from Los Angeles on May 28, 2020. He pulled into the driveway at 4:30 p.m., and I was waiting at the door with a smile. "Welcome home," I said, and I kissed him. He hugged me, told me he'd missed me, asked about my 2 weeks. "Quiet," I said. "Boring. I'm glad you're back." We had dinner. I made his favorite, pot roast with potatoes and carrots. We watched TV. We went to bed. And the whole time I was screaming inside, but I didn't let it show, not even for a second. Over the next 4 months, while Patricia and her team built the legal case, I played my role perfectly. I was the loving, supportive wife. I asked about his work. I listened to his lies. I smiled and nodded and pretended everything was fine. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. There were nights I'd lock myself in the bathroom and cry silently into a towel so he wouldn't hear. Mornings I'd stare at myself in the mirror and barely recognize the woman looking back. She had my face, but her eyes were dead. I'd watch Richard get ready for his trips to Los Angeles, packing his suitcase, humming to himself, completely at ease. And I'd think about how he was going to see his other family. His real family, maybe. The one he'd chosen to have children with. The one he'd legally married while still married to me. Every kiss made me want to vomit. Every "I love you" felt like a knife. Every time he touched me, I had to force myself not to recoil. But I smiled. I played along. I waited. Meanwhile, Patricia was working with a forensic accountant to trace every dollar Richard had stolen. We subpoenaed bank records. We tracked property purchases. We documented everything. The accountant's name was Harold Chen, no relation to Richard despite the shared surname. Harold was meticulous, brilliant, and absolutely relentless. He traced money through shell companies, offshore accounts, and complex real estate transactions. He found every hidden asset, every fraudulent transfer, every penny Richard had stolen. "Your husband is sophisticated," Harold told me during one of our meetings. "He knows how to move money, how to hide assets, but he also got cocky. He left trails, and I'm following every single one." We also hired a private investigator named Tom Henderson. Tom followed Richard during his business trips to Los Angeles, photographed him with Jennifer and the girls, documented his second life in excruciating detail. Tom's reports were thorough and heartbreaking. Photos of Richard pushing Sophie on a swing, video of him helping Emma with homework at their kitchen table, images of him and Jennifer holding hands at a school event, looking for all the world like a normal, happy family. The family I'd wanted, the life I'd been promised, just with someone else. One photo in particular haunted me. Richard and both girls, all wearing matching World's Best Dad t-shirts, grinning at the camera. It had been taken on Father's Day 2020, the same day I'd made Richard his favorite breakfast and given him a card thanking him for being such a wonderful husband. I'd spent that Father's Day mourning the children we'd never had while he'd spent it celebrating the children he'd had with another woman. The evidence was damning, overwhelming, irrefutable. By September 2020, we had everything we needed. Patricia estimated we could recover $1.8 million in stolen assets, the equity in the LA house, the girls' college funds, money from business accounts, even Jennifer's car since it had been purchased with fraudulently obtained funds. "We're ready," Patricia told me on September 15th. "Time to file," but I had a different idea. "Can we wait?" I asked. "Just a few more weeks. I want to do this my way." Patricia looked at me carefully. "What do you have in mind?" "He needs to bring her here," I said. "I want to see his face when both of his worlds collide. Can we arrange that?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "That's risky. He might run." "He won't run. His ego won't let him. If we corner him the right way, he'll think he can talk his way out of it." "And how do we corner him?" I smiled. It probably wasn't a nice smile. "I'm going to tell him I know about the affair. Just the affair, not the marriage, not the kids. I'm going to say I want to meet her. I'll say I need closure, or I need to understand, or whatever bullshit he'll believe. I'll tell him I'm willing to try to work through it, but only if he's completely honest with me." "And you think he'll bring her here?" "Oh, I know he will. He'll think it's his chance to control the narrative, to make me the understanding wife who forgives. He's been manipulating me for 23 years. He'll think he can manipulate me through this too." Patricia considered. "You're playing a dangerous game." "Maybe, but I want to see both their faces when they realize the truth. I've earned that." So that's what we did. On September 23rd, 2020, I told Richard I knew about the affair. I waited until he was packing for one of his Los Angeles trips. He was in our bedroom, putting clothes in his suitcase, and I just said it. "I know about Jennifer." He froze. For just a second, his whole body went rigid. Then he turned, and his face was a mask of confusion. "What? Maggie, what are you talking about?" "Jennifer Wu, your girlfriend in Los Angeles. I know about her." His expression shifted through several emotions: panic, calculation, decision. Then he settled on concerned innocence. "Maggie, I don't know what you think you know, but Richard, stop. I found the phone. I saw the messages. I know you've been having an affair. Note that I said affair, not marriage, not family. I let him think I only knew part of it. He sat down on the bed, put his head in his hands, started crying. Crying. "I'm so sorry," he said. "God, Maggie, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. It just happened. 8 years, 2 children, a marriage. Just happened." "How long?" I asked. My voice was calm. 2 years, he lied. "It's been 2 years. But Maggie, I love you. I've always loved you. I was lonely. With all the travel, and you were so busy at work. I'm so sorry." He was good. I'll give him that. The tears looked real. The remorse seemed genuine. "I want to meet her," I said. His head snapped up. "What?" "I need to see her to understand. I can't process this without seeing who she is." "Maggie, that's not a good idea." "Richard, if we're going to have any chance of working through this, I need complete honesty. I need to look her in the eye. I need to hear from both of you what this was. Otherwise, I'll always wonder." I watched him think through it, watched him calculate the angles, and I saw the moment he decided he could use this to his advantage. "Okay," he said slowly. "If that's what you need, I'll ask her to come here. We can all talk, like adults. We can figure this out together." "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." He hugged me, told me again how sorry he was, how much he loved me, how he'd do anything to fix this, and the whole time I was thinking, you have no idea what's coming. Richard postponed his LA trip and spent the next 3 days doing damage control with Jennifer. I don't know what he told her, probably some version of, "My wife knows, but I can handle her. Just trust me." But she agreed to come to Seattle. We set it up for Saturday, October 3rd, at 2:30 p.m. Richard said they'd come to our house. We'd all sit down together. We'd talk it through. "She's nervous," Richard told me on Friday night, "but she wants to do this. She cares about you, Maggie. She doesn't want to be the reason our marriage ends." The sheer audacity of it. He was standing in our kitchen, lying to my face, and expecting me to believe his mistress, his second wife, the mother of his children, cared about my feelings. "I appreciate that," I said sweetly. That Friday night, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, I was past that, from anticipation. Patricia had everything ready. The police were on standby. The divorce papers were filed and ready to be served. The evidence was compiled in binders that would be handed to the DA's office on Monday morning. But tomorrow was for me. Saturday morning, I got up early. I cleaned the house, I made coffee, I put on a nice dress, nothing fancy, just a casual blue sundress, the kind a hurt but hopeful wife might wear to a difficult conversation. I set up the living room like we were having guests, set out water glasses, arranged the furniture so there'd be space for 4 people to sit and talk. At 2:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Patricia. "Officers are parked 2 blocks away. DA's office confirmed they're ready to prosecute. You sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure," I typed back. At 2:35 p.m., Richard's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window. Richard got out from the driver's side. A woman got out from the passenger side. Jennifer Wu was beautiful. Petite, delicate features, long black hair. She was wearing a nervous expression and a pale pink blouse. And my grandmother's ring. That ring had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandmother had given it to me on her deathbed, squeezing my hand and telling me to pass it to my daughter someday. I'd put it in our safe deposit box for safekeeping. Richard had given it to his second wife. The rage that went through me in that moment was almost physical, hot and sharp and blinding. But I pushed it down, smiled, went to the door. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:47 p.m. I opened the door. Richard was holding Jennifer's hand. "Maggie," Richard said. His voice was gentle, careful. "This is Jennifer. Jennifer, this is my wife, Maggie." "Hi," Jennifer said softly. She looked terrified. "Thank you for agreeing to this. I know this must be so hard." I smiled at her. "Come in, please. Let's all sit down and talk." They came in. Richard was tense, watching me carefully. Jennifer was practically trembling. "Can I get you anything?" I asked. "Water? Coffee?" "Water's fine," Richard said. I went to the kitchen, poured 3 glasses of water, took a breath, and pulled out my phone. I sent a text. "They're here." Then I went back to the living room. Richard and Jennifer were sitting on the couch. I sat in the armchair across from them. "So," I said, "where should we start?" Richard leaned forward. This was his element: negotiation, persuasion, control. "Maggie, first I want to say again how incredibly sorry I am. What I did, what we did, was wrong. There's no excuse. We never meant to hurt you," Jennifer added. She looked like she might cry. "I never wanted to be the other woman. We fell in love. And I know that doesn't make it okay, but how long have you been together?" I asked. They looked at each other. Richard was doing calculations, trying to figure out what I already knew, how much he could safely lie. 2 years, he said. "Closer to 3, Jennifer said at the same time. They looked at each other again. Jennifer's expression turned confused. "Richard said 2 years, she said slowly. "Well, 2 years seriously," Richard amended. "We met about 3 years ago, but we didn't start actually being together until 2 years ago." I nodded like I was taking this in, like I was a wounded wife trying to understand. "And you love each other?" I asked. "Yes," Jennifer said quickly. "I love him, and I know this is terrible, but I do. I love him." "Do you know he's married?" I asked her. She blinked. "Of course. That's why we're here. To talk about what happens now." "Right," I said. "But I mean, do you know he's married? Currently, legally married?" "To you," Jennifer said, sounding confused. "Yes, to me. Since 2003. Jennifer looked at Richard. "Richard, what is she?" "Maggie, I don't understand what you're getting at," Richard said. His voice had an edge now. "I'm just trying to establish facts," I said calmly. "So we're all on the same page. I've been married to Richard for 17 years at this point, since June 2003. You understand that, Jennifer? Yes, she said, still confused. And during those 17 years, I've been faithful to him. I've worked 60-hour weeks. I've contributed over $400,000 to our joint finances. I've supported his business. I've been a good wife. Maggie, where is this going? Richard asked. He was getting nervous. I'm just setting context, honey, I said, and the endearment was like acid in my mouth. Jennifer, can I ask you, are you married? She went very still. That's not relevant. But you are, aren't you? Married, I mean. To Richard. The room went dead silent. Jennifer's face drained of color. She turned to look at Richard. What is she talking about? She's confused, Richard said quickly. Maggie, you're not making sense. October 14th, 2012, I said, pulling out my phone where I'd queued up the wedding photos. The Botanical Hotel in Los Angeles, 50 guests. Jennifer wore an ivory dress. Richard, you wore a navy tuxedo. The cake was chocolate with raspberry filling. I held up my phone so Jennifer could see the photos. Her hand flew to her mouth. You married her, I said to Richard. While you were married to me. That's called bigamy, Richard. It's a felony. You said you were divorced, Jennifer screamed at him, jumping up from the couch. You said your first marriage ended years before we met. Jennifer, let me explain. Richard stood too, reaching for her. Don't touch me. She backed away from him. You said you were divorced. You showed me papers. What papers? I asked, curious despite everything. Divorce papers, Jennifer said. She was crying now. From 2009. He said he'd been married before, that it ended badly, but that he was free. He showed me official papers. He forged them, I said. Our marriage never ended. I've been his legal wife this entire time. Jennifer turned back to Richard. We have 2 kids, she whispered. We have Emma and Sophie. What have you done? You have children, I said. That was a lie, of course. I knew about Emma and Sophie, but I needed Richard to admit it. Needed him to say it out loud. Maggie, please, Richard started. Do you have children with her? I demanded. Yes, Jennifer said before Richard could stop her. We have 2 daughters. Emma is 8 and Sophie is 6, and we're married. Or I thought we were. Oh my God. She started crying harder. Oh my God, this means we're not. This means my girls are illegitimate, I finished. Yes, because your marriage was never legal. You knew? Jennifer screamed at Richard. You knew the whole time and you let me believe. You let me have children with you. I love you, Richard said desperately. I love you and the girls. I was going to divorce Maggie. I just needed time. 23 years wasn't enough time, I asked. Because we've been married for 23 years, Richard, not 17. I lied before. We got married in 2003. It's 2020. 23 years. What? Jennifer's head swung back to me. 23 years? But he said, he's been lying to both of us, I said. The difference is, I've known about you for 4 months. You just found out about me today. The doorbell rang. Richard's head snapped toward the door. Who's that? That, I said, standing up, would be the police. I watched the color drain from his face, watched him understand, finally, that he'd been played. You set me up, he breathed. No, Richard, I just stopped protecting you. I walked to the door and opened it. 2 Seattle PD officers stood on my doorstep. Behind them, I could see Patricia getting out of her car. Mrs. Chen, the first officer said, we're here about the complaint you filed regarding forgery and fraud. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Richard backed up as the officers entered. Maggie, wait, we can work this out. Mr. Chen, the second officer said, we need you to come with us. We have some questions about forged documents and fraudulent financial transactions. I want a lawyer, Richard said. That's your right, but you're coming down to the station. Patricia entered then, carrying her briefcase. Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Wu, is it? I'm Patricia Goldstein, Mrs. Chen's attorney. She looked at Jennifer. You should know that any marriage you believe you entered into with Mr. Chen is void. You were never legally married. However, if he represented himself as single and you entered into the relationship in good faith, you may have grounds for your own legal action. Jennifer was crying so hard she could barely stand. My daughters, she kept saying. My daughters. Your daughters are innocent in all this, Patricia said more gently, and there are legal remedies. But right now, you need to understand that any joint assets you have with Mr. Chen may be subject to seizure. What? Jennifer's head shot up. Mr. Chen is legally married to Mrs. Chen here. That means that any property acquired during their marriage is potentially community property. The house you live in, for example, was purchased with funds that legally belong to both Mr. and Mrs. Chen. No, Jennifer whispered. No, that's our house. We bought it. With $243,000 that belonged to my deceased mother, I said, that Richard stole from me. Jennifer looked like she might collapse. You can't take our house, she said. My kids live there. That's their home. That's for the court to decide, Patricia said. But yes, Mrs. Chen has a strong claim to that property. Maggie, please, Richard said. The officers had him by the arms now. Please don't do this. Think about Jennifer and the girls. They're innocent. Were they innocent when you were using my money to pay for their private school? I asked. Were they innocent when you gave Jennifer my grandmother's ring? I pointed at Jennifer's hand. That ring? Take it off. Jennifer looked down at the ring like she'd forgotten she was wearing it. With shaking fingers, she pulled it off and held it out to me. I took it. The metal was warm from her skin. That belonged to my grandmother, I said. It was supposed to go to my daughter someday, but I never got to have children because my husband kept saying we should wait. And now I'm 62 years old and I know why he wanted to wait. He already had children. With you. I didn't know, Jennifer whispered. I swear I didn't know. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I believed her. She'd been lied to just like me, used just like me. I believe you, I said, and I'm sorry that he did this to you too. But that doesn't change the fact that you benefited from my stolen money. So yes, I'm taking back what's mine. All of it. The officers started walking Richard toward the door. Maggie, he called back. Maggie, I love you. I've always loved you. We can fix this. I didn't answer, didn't even look at him. Patricia stepped closer to me. Are you okay? I'm perfect, I said. And I was. The next 6 months were a legal hurricane. Richard was arrested and charged with bigamy, fraud, forgery, and identity theft. His bail was set at $500,000. He couldn't make it. All his liquid assets were frozen pending investigation. He sat in jail for 3 weeks before his business partner David finally bailed him out. That friendship ended shortly after when David realized Richard had been stealing from the business too. The divorce proceedings were complex. Because Richard had committed fraud throughout our marriage, the court granted me an emergency motion to freeze all assets, everything, the Seattle house, the Los Angeles house, bank accounts, business accounts, vehicles, investment portfolios. It took 4 months for the forensic accountants to trace everything Richard had stolen. The final tally was devastating. Over the course of our marriage, Richard had taken $387,000 from my retirement accounts for the 2010 development, $243,000 from my mother's inheritance, $400,000 from the Seattle house via forged second mortgage, $180,000 from my nursing income over the years, deposited to joint accounts, then transferred to his private accounts, and $290,000 from the 2013 condo project profits that should have been mine. Total, $1,500,000 directly stolen from me. Additionally, the Seattle house had $600,000 in equity, half of which was legally mine. The Los Angeles house had $450,000 in equity, all of which the court ruled was mine because it had been purchased with my mother's stolen inheritance. Richard's business had $200,000 in remaining assets after debts were paid. Grand total of assets I was awarded, $1,850,000. 1.8, $5 million. But getting the money and getting Richard to actually pay were two different things. He fought me on everything, claimed the Los Angeles house couldn't be sold because Jennifer and the girls lived there, claimed his business was worth nothing, claimed I was owed nothing because I'd abandoned my nursing career voluntarily. His lawyer was expensive and aggressive, but Patricia was better. In February 2021, the judge ruled in my favor on every major point. The Seattle house would be sold, and I'd receive all proceeds after the fraudulent second mortgage was paid off. The Los Angeles house would be sold, and all proceeds would come to me. Richard's business would be liquidated, and I'd receive my share. Jennifer, who'd filed her own lawsuit against Richard for fraud and misrepresentation, was awarded child support of $4,000 per month to be paid by Richard, not from my settlement. Richard appealed everything, drew out the process for months, but in June 2021, the Seattle house sold for $925,000. After paying off the fraudulent mortgage and closing costs, I received $480,000. In August 2021, the Los Angeles house sold for $760,000. I received $680,000 after closing costs. Jennifer and the girls had to move. I felt bad about that, but not bad enough to let them keep a house bought with my dead mother's money. Richard's business was sold to his former partner, David, for $150,000, and I received $75,000 as my share. Additional assets, cars, Richard's watch collection, some rental properties he had hidden, added another $315,000. By November 2021, I had received $1,550,000 in cash and assets. The remaining $300,000 was supposed to come from Richard's personal accounts and future earnings, but Richard declared bankruptcy and claimed he had nothing left. I hired a collections attorney. We garnished his wages. We put liens on any future income. We made sure that for the rest of his natural life, any money Richard Chen earned would be partially mine until that debt was paid. As of today, he's paid another $120,000, so in total, I've recovered $1,670,000 of the $1,850,000 I was awarded. Close enough to $1.8 million, but the money was only part of the resolution. In March 2021, Richard went to trial for bigamy and fraud. Jennifer testified against him. So did I. So did the forensic accountants. So did David, his former business partner, who revealed Richard had also embezzled $340,000 from their company. The evidence was overwhelming. Richard was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison and ordered him to pay $2,200,000 in restitution, my settlement, plus the money he'd stolen from the business. He served 4 years, getting out early for good behavior in 2025. When he got out, he was a broken man. His real estate license had been revoked, his business was gone, his reputation was destroyed. He had no money, no property, no career. He's working as a warehouse manager now, making $45,000 a year. His wages are garnished for child support to Jennifer and restitution payments to me and David. After all deductions, Richard takes home about $1,800 per month. He lives in a studio apartment. He drives a 2003 Honda Civic. He sees his daughters every other weekend, when Jennifer allows it, which isn't often. He tried to contact me once, about 6 months after he got out of prison. Sent me a letter. It was full of apologies, explanations, excuses. He said he'd been wrong. Said he'd been living a lie for so long he'd started to believe it himself. Said he still loved me, had always loved me, if that meant anything. I didn't respond. I gave the letter to Patricia, who added it to the case file in case he tried to claim he'd paid his debt and deserved relief from the ongoing garnishment. The last I heard, he was dating someone new, a woman in her 50s who works at his warehouse. I hope she checks his background before she gets too invested. Jennifer and I have an odd relationship now. After the initial shock wore off, after the houses were sold and the legal battles ended, she reached out to me. "I know you don't owe me anything," she wrote in an email, "and I know I benefited from what he stole from you. But I wanted you to know that I truly didn't know he was still married. He showed me divorce papers. He introduced me to his family as his girlfriend first, then later his fiancée, then his wife. Everyone believed we were legitimately married. I'm so sorry for what happened to you." I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to process. Eventually, I wrote back, "I believe you, and I'm sorry he lied to you too. But I can't be your friend. You and your daughters were funded by my stolen money. I hope you understand." She wrote back, "I do understand. I just wanted you to know the truth. And thank you for not going after child support or trying to make the girls pay for their father's sins. They're innocent in this. That's all I wanted to say." She was right. Emma and Sophie were innocent. They hadn't asked to be born into Richard's web of lies. Jennifer moved back in with her parents after losing the house. She enrolled the girls in public school. She picked up extra shifts at the dental office. I heard through the legal grapevine that she eventually got a settlement from Richard's pension, about $80,000 total, which she put toward a small condo. She's dating someone new now too, a teacher, someone honest. I hope she's happy, I really do. She was a victim of Richard's lies, just like me. As for me, I'm 62 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm free. I took the settlement money and invested it wisely. Worked with a financial advisor, a woman recommended by Patricia, someone who specializes in rebuilding wealth after divorce. I bought a modest condo overlooking the water, 2 bedrooms, beautiful view, enough space for me and the life I'm building. I went back to nursing full-time. Turns out I'd missed it more than I realized. I'd thought I was tired of the work, but I'd really just been tired of working to fund Richard's double life. Now that I'm working for myself, for my own future, it feels different. I reconnected with Linda, who I'd drifted away from during the worst years of the discovery and legal battles. She's been amazing. We have dinner every week, we go to movies, we laugh about how we both have terrible taste in men, but excellent taste in wine. I joined a support group for women over 50 who are rebuilding their lives after divorce. Hearing their stories, some worse than mine, some better, all of them heartbreaking in their own ways, made me feel less alone. I started traveling. Nothing fancy, but places I'd always wanted to see. I went to Ireland last year. I'm planning a trip to Japan for next spring. I'm dating. That surprised me more than anything. I thought I'd be done with men forever after Richard, but I met someone, a widower named James, a retired teacher, kind and funny and honest. We're taking it slow, very slow. But it's nice to have companionship. I think about Richard sometimes, about how he threw away 23 years of love and partnership for, what? The thrill of having 2 lives, the ego boost of making 2 women believe he was their whole world. I don't hate him anymore. Hate takes energy, and I don't want to give him any more of mine. But I don't forgive him either. Some things are unforgivable. What he did wasn't just about stealing money or cheating. He stole years of my life. He stole my ability to have children. He stole my trust, my sense of security, my faith in my own judgment. He took a woman who'd survived 1 bad marriage and learned to be independent, and he slowly, methodically broke her down until she was completely dependent on him, and then he robbed her blind. But here's what Richard didn't count on. I'm still standing. I rebuilt my life. I recovered my money. I reclaimed my power. And every month, when that garnishment check hits my account, another chunk of the debt he owes me, I smile. Because Richard Chen is going to be paying for what he did for the rest of his life, and I'm going to be living my best life, free from him, free from lies, finally, truly free. If you're reading this, or listening to this, if you're watching the video, and you see yourself in my story, please hear me. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If you're being kept away from financial information, if there are locked drawers and secret phones, if your partner is gone for mysterious stretches of time, if you're being told to just trust me about money, don't. Ask questions, demand answers, put your name on assets, know where the money is and where it's going. And if you discover you've been betrayed the way I was, don't confront immediately. Document everything, build your case, get a lawyer before you tip your hand. Because people like Richard, people who can lie to your face for decades, they're master manipulators. If you confront them without a plan, they'll twist the narrative, hide assets, and leave you with nothing. But if you're patient, if you're strategic, if you build an airtight case before you strike, you can win. I did. And if I can do it at 62 years old, after 23 years of lies, you can too. One more thing I learned. The pain doesn't last forever. I thought it would. I thought I'd carry the weight of Richard's betrayal for the rest of my life, that every relationship would be poisoned by what he did, that I'd never trust again, never love again, never feel safe again. But that wasn't true. Time really does heal. Not completely. I still have scars, still have moments where the old pain resurfaces, but it gets better. The wound closes. You learn to live around it. And eventually, you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're actually living. Really living, maybe for the first time. That's the gift Richard never intended to give me. Freedom. Freedom from his lies. Freedom from his manipulation. Freedom to build a life on my own terms, with my own money, by my own rules. He thought he was taking everything from me. But what he actually did was set me free. So that's my story. The story of how my husband showed up at my door with his other wife, and how he left having lost $1.8 million, his freedom, his reputation, and his future. Was it worth it? All the pain, all the legal battles, all the months of pretending everything was fine while I built my case? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because I'm free now, and he's not. And every single day, I wake up in my beautiful condo, look out at the water, and think, I won. If this story resonated with you, if you've been through something similar, or if you're going through it now, please leave a comment. Tell me your story. Let's support each other. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival and justice, and if you want to support the channel directly, click the super thanks button. It helps me keep making content. Remember, you're stronger than you think. You deserve better than lies. And justice, real justice, is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. And Richard, if you're watching this, the garnishment notice hits your paycheck on the 15th of every month for the next 20 years. See you then.